Okay, what did you all talk about? What is a fallacy? Somebody be brave and give an answer. Yeah.
So basically there's an argument, and basically it's an argument, but if you look closer in the argument, you can see the inconsistencies
Okay.
in that argument.
Okay, so there's some sort of inconsistencies in the argument. Something's going wrong. Okay, good. What else? Yeah.
I mean, it's like a common bad argument that's got like, the fallacies, they'll have the same like little loophole to work around and get to a quicker conclusion than drawing conclusions from the premises.
Okay. Okay, so something about fallacies, they have a kind of structure to them or a pattern to them or something? Okay, good.
They're usually used to combat like good arguments or just arguments in general.
People often use them, to just push away or attack better arguments. Sure. Anybody else want to share something? Those were all good answers. They all, get to one of the key features of fallacies. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm actually going to present a PowerPoint because we have a lot of fallacies to go over. But I'll be uploading this for y'all, so you will be able to look at it later. To answer the question, though, we could say that a fallacy is a use of improper or invalid reasoning in an argument. Okay? So you remember invalid from our last class? What does that mean? Say that again? That's true, but what does validity mean in the structure of an argument?
It all kind of pertains or supports the argument. It can be traced from one side to another.
Yeah. Yep.
Can the premises be true and the conclusion be false?
You've honed in on it, right? For a valid argument, if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. Okay? So a fallacy is a use of invalid or improper reasoning in an argument. It doesn't mean that the argument has to be invalid for there to be a fallacy there, but something has gone wrong with the reasoning. Okay? My colleague, or I should say one of my mentors that I learned from, characterized fallacies this way. Bad arguments that happen so often we give them names. And as we go through class today, try to reflect on where you might have seen these, where you might have experienced these, because you definitely have. What a lot of fallacies have in common is that they're often irrelevant to the overall point that the person is trying to make. So, as we'll see with our first fallacy, these ways of constructing and utilizing arguments, these fallacious ways, are often distractions, they're irrelevant. They don't have any real part to play in the point that's trying to be made. Okay? Any questions so far? All right. Full steam ahead. Now, just because somebody uses a fallacy doesn't mean that what they're saying is false necessarily. Okay? I could construct a bad argument and it's fallacious and it's riddled with fallacies, but my conclusion could still be true. That's possible. So if you see a fallacy in somebody's argument, it doesn't necessarily mean their conclusion is false. But it should trigger like a red flag for you. Okay? Because we should strive to construct valid and sensical arguments, and we want to support our points and our views with arguments that don't have fallacies in them. Okay? Oftentimes, though, if you see a fallacy in an argument, that should give you a little clue that something has gone wrong here. I need to pay more attention, right? I should dig more into this. So, the truth of the conclusion is something that is going to have to be investigated separately But oftentimes, a fallacy will lead to a false conclusion, though not always. Again, this is a critical thinking class. So I'm trying to get you all to think about these ideas, to think about the justifications for your views, to construct good arguments. So I don't just want you to say true things. And this is going to come up when we do the in-person essays. I want you to justify your views logically and reasonably, hopefully without any fallacies. Because if you just use these all the time, if you lean into them, people are not going to take you seriously. Okay? And you're not going to have a proper understanding or a proper justification for your own beliefs. So we want to back up what we say with reasonable and justifiable arguments, which is to say they don't contain fallacies. All right, we all good so far? Making sense? Okay. Well, let's get into some of the fallacies. There are a lot of them. The ones I'm going to present to you today, this list is not exhaustive. Okay, there are many more fallacies than these, but these are the ones that I see most often. A lot of these are the ones mentioned in the text. So, red herring fallacy. Does anybody have any idea what this is? What does this look like? What's going on when somebody uses this fallacy? Yeah, Sawyer.
How was described to me was like when someone tries to use a distraction in the middle of an argument, or how previous teacher said, if someone just started rambling about a red herring when you were arguing about something else.
Yeah, good. Anything else? Anybody want to add something? You hit on the overall point, the general point really well. A red herring is something that's irrelevant to the overall point. Okay? If you're making an argument, say, about why we should scale back our fossil fuel use, and somebody says, but I like being able to play my Game Boy. Game Boys are the best in the world, and Game Boys make the world go round. Depending on how they present that, that could be related to the argument. But they could be using it to just distract you away from the general point you're trying to make. Or they're not understanding the general point you're trying to make. Okay? This is going to be a little tricky seeing these in action, especially if you're having a conversation with somebody in person. Because whether or not somebody is actually engaging in a fallacy is going to depend on the context. If they explained in some way why they said this about the Game Boy in a way that's relevant to your general point, then it wouldn't be a red herring. Okay, so you have to pay attention to the details, the nuances of what they're saying, how it's being said, all of that stuff. But yes, a red herring generally involves redirecting one's attention away from the main point. So, for example, let's say we're having an argument. I'm giving you an argument that farmers shouldn't use pesticides in their crops. If you responded like this, but people need to eat fruits and vegetables, farmers shouldn't stop farming. Can we see how that's not relevant to the point being made, right? Yeah, we're talking about farming, but this doesn't have anything directly to do with this. All right? There's a different point being made here. There's not a response to the argument, really. Could anybody provide another example? Have you ever encountered a red herring? Well, what was the example from the text? Anybody remember? You can look at your notes. If I said, USF should give the philosophy graduate students more money because we work hard and we're doing a service to the community. If you wanted to throw in a red herring, what might you say? Yeah.
But what about the money for the football team?
But what about the money for the football team? Right. Yeah, you're not even addressing my point of why I should be paid more. Right? Right. You have gone to talk about something else. The football team is a completely distinct and separate thing. Okay? Good. All right, so that's the first one. Red herring. Second fallacy. Straw manning. You've heard this phrase before, right? Oh, that's a straw man. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. Okay, now what does it mean? What does it mean to straw man someone? Any ideas? Yeah.
To misconstrue someone's argument to make it easier to take down.
Excellent. That is exactly right. Yes. When we set up a straw man, what we're doing is we're misrepresenting their argument. Okay? We're misrepresenting it and then tearing down that misrepresentation. That's what straw manning is all about. So, for example, in response to an argument, say I'm giving you this argument, the U.S. government should prioritize taking care of their own citizens before others. Someone responds with the following. Oh, so you're saying we shouldn't help other countries at all? That's stupid. If the U.S. has money, it should give it to other countries. Can you see how this is a misrepresentation of the first view? The first view is saying something about what the U.S. government's priorities should be. Whereas the second view, it's kind of like a red herring as well. It's talking about a different issue, right? A different point. It's a misrepresentation. So, when you read an argument in a text, when you hear somebody's argument in person, the most charitable thing that you can do is to represent their position back to them as well and as strong as you can. Does anybody know what this is called? Steel manning. That's right. When you encounter an argument, you try to represent it as perfectly and as strongly as you can. That's called steel manning. Why? Well, you might want to do this because if you can knock down the strongest version of somebody's argument, well, you've done a really good job undermining their point, right? If you can take down the strongest version of somebody's argument, that means you have a good argument, right? You have a position maybe is reasonable, more justifiable than the other one. So, straw manning has to do with misrepresenting somebody's argument or position and then attacking that misrepresentation. Can anybody provide an example of this? Another example? What if I said this? USF really needs to increase the number of parking lots and parking garages on campus because traffic sucks and the parking sucks and there's not enough, and it would make things more smooth for everybody. How might you misrepresent that view back to me? Yeah.
So you want more noisy construction near where students are trying to study?
Right. Yeah, and you could say that might also be an example of a red herring, right? Not only have you misrepresented my position, my argument, but you've also taken the conversation in a different direction, right? Not addressing the main point. Yeah, good. Okay, how about the third one? Appeal to fear. What do you think this means? If you appeal to fear, yeah.
Like bullying someone in order for them to believe a statement or to do an action.
Ah, yeah, you've honed in on something really important there, right? Maybe it doesn't have to be bullying exactly, but it involves appealing to somebody's emotion, not appealing to their reason, not appealing to their rationality. That's what the appeal to fear is all about. You see this in practice when somebody tries to make the other person afraid of what might happen to them if they don't go along with what they're saying. Right? We've all seen this in like mafia movies, right? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you any more money. Like my shop is already bleeding enough as it is. But what do the gangsters say? You better cough up more, or who knows what's going to happen to you. Right? Is that a logical appeal? I mean, no, not really. They're appealing to the person's emotion to try to persuade them or get them to do something. They're not using a rational argument, really. This is the example I even used. Look at that. In response to an argument in which a shopkeeper wants to charge every customer the same price for his items, but the mafia members want a discount, they might say, well, if we don't get a little discount, who knows what's going to happen to your store? And then, they brandish their gun or whatever. So, appeal to fear and fallacies like it that you're going to see this word in, appeal, have to do with referencing or appealing to something that doesn't matter. It's not relevant to the logic of the position or the argument. Okay? Make sense? I know this isn't riveting, but it needs to be done. Okay, how about appeal to pity? If appeal to fear is about, appealing to that person's fear or trying to get them afraid, what do you think appeal to pity is? Angel.
It's like coercing someone by saying something bad will happen to someone else if you don't do the action or statement instead of something bad will happen to you.
Ah! Yeah, and often who is that someone else?
Someone you care about?
Could be. Us instructors, us teachers see this a lot. Okay, the appeal to pity. I've had students in the past who will say, hey, can you just please give me a B in the class? And I'm like, well, you didn't do work that has earned a B. Okay, you were late to every class. You didn't turn in half the assignments. You're lucky you're getting a D+. Okay? And what do some of them sometimes say? I'm going to lose my scholarship if I don't get a B. We could see this as an example of appeal to pity. Okay, they didn't respond to my argument, me laying out the evidence of why they earned the grade that they did. Instead, they're trying to appeal to my pity, my empathy, to give them a better grade. All right? And I do empathize with students, don't get me wrong. I'm not a jerk. But the appeal to pity, again, is not addressing the point, the first argument or point that was being made. It's appealing to the person's emotions. And when we're making arguments, we want to try not to appeal to people's emotions. Okay? We want to appeal to the rational part of their minds. We want to offer reasons and justifications. Appealing to emotions is something completely different that we're actually going to look at next week. And it can be very powerful, but that doesn't play into the construction of a rational and logical argument. Okay? Can anybody give me another example of appealing to pity? Take a chance. Throw it out there. Yeah, Angel.
If you don't let me adopt this dog, it'll get put in the pound.
Yeah, that could be an appeal to pity. Yeah. Good. Although, again, I want to also impress this upon you. It's going to depend on the context of the argument. Okay? what's been said and what the point being made is. In certain situations, that might not be an appeal to pity. It might just be a rational, logical description of what's going to happen, and you're like, well, we should avoid that, you know? So, you need to look at the context of the arguments being made to see if the person responding to them is actually committing a fallacy, all right? You're going to have to put your critical thinking caps on. All right, how about this one? Appeal to popularity. What's this one all about? Yeah.
Basically, if multiple people or a giant majority of people believe in something, then you will use that as credibility, and you will say, "Oh, I believe it because a lot of other people believe it."
Ah. So it has to do with forming an argument on what other people are doing, or with reference to what's popular. Yeah. Y'all know what this is from, right? The appeal to popularity is a fallacy which basically says we should do something or we should think something is true because it's popular, because a lot of people do. But tell me, does something's being popular make it true or right? I'm seeing shaking of heads. Why not? Angel.
Popular beliefs can be like rooted in misinformation or like previously factual information that has since been disproved.
Sure. Yeah, isn't it possible that a bunch of people, the majority of people, could be fucking wrong? You probably already think a lot of people are wrong on various things, right? You're like, yeah, the majority of people don't know what the hell is going on. So, if you believe that, if you think that, why would you think that the view that the majority of people believe is correct? Whether or not, the majority of people believe it or not, or are arguing for it, is completely separate from whether the thing is true. These are two distinct things, okay, that have no bearing on each other. So, for example, in response to a discussion about religion, an argument about religion, someone might say, well, the majority of Americans are Christian, so Christianity must be true. Can you see the fallacy here? Whether or not Christianity is true has nothing logically to do with how many people believe in it. It could be, but whether or not a bunch of people believe it has no bearing on its truth. Similarly, just because a lot of people are doing something, that doesn't necessarily mean we should do it, right? We even have a phrase about this. Maybe your parents told you it once. If your friends are going to jump or run off a bridge, are you going to do it too? Right? Anybody ever hear that? Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting older, but I'm not too old yet. Any questions about this one? All right. Moving on. How about appeal to novelty? Any idea what this might mean? What this involves? Yeah.
Because something's new, we should go with it. Like this new cutting edge technology, but you don't say anything about what's cutting edge about it.
Ah, okay. So, yeah, whether we should go with something just because it's new. Good. The appeal to novelty is all about saying we should accept this view, or we should go with this technology, or we should do this thing because it's new. That's the reason that they offer. What do y'all think about this one? Should we go with something because it's new? Just because it's new? No? I agree. Whether or not something is new doesn't have any necessary bearing on whether that view is true, whether that technology is better, whether that practice is more reasonable or more moral. All these things are distinct from when this thing popped up into existence. All right? For example, the new iPhone update sucks. And I am not going to download it. Because it's worse than what I have right now. At least that's my view. All right? Maybe you believe something differently. But let's take an example. We're having an argument about the earth. Somebody says in response, there is a new scientific view based on evidence that the earth is flat. This is the new view. So it must be true. Well, should we believe it just because it's new? No, again, people can be wrong. Something's newness has no logical bearing on whether or not it's true, good, right, whatever. Could somebody provide another example? Yeah.
Most likely new cars. Like sometimes they could be better, but and then sometimes they can be worse. So like say for example, I have this, let's say 2016 Honda, and then 2026 came out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have as many miles to the gas for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think a lot of newer cars suck. You know, it seems like the cars from the 90s or early 2000s are more reliable. But, I don't know. I might be biased. Yeah.
I would say like AI saying it'll make us a lot of money and it'll progress humanity, stuff like that, but not saying how it will. They just say, oh, we got to keep going with it. The new models have been released. We've got quantum AI now.
Right.
All that stuff.
Right, yeah. If somebody is trying to push you to accept a view or adopt a technology or practice, and the only reason they offer is because it's new, they're engaging in this fallacy. All right? Okay. Let's do another appeal one. Appeal to tradition. Switch gears a little bit. What's the appeal to tradition all about? Yeah.
It's basically the opposite, saying that you should agree with something because it's the way it's always been.
Right. Exactly. Somebody is committing this fallacy when the only reason they offer for something is, well, this is the way it's been done. This is how we've always done it. This is what the tradition is. But tell me, have human beings always done what's reasonable and good and right? Has that always been our traditions? No, I think a lot of you are going to say, we used to do some messed up stuff that was a part of our tradition, right? Just because something has been done for a long time, or this is the way humans have done it, doesn't necessarily mean it's true or good. All right? But that's what this fallacy is saying. So, for example, in response to a discussion about whether or not women can hold leadership positions in church, if someone says, well, the Catholic Church has always excluded women from the priesthood, so this is the way it should be, this is the good way to go. What's wrong with this statement?
I would say what's wrong with it is that it should be because it's been like that for multiple years, basically, or like the entire time of the religion.
Yeah, right, right. Again, just because we've done something a certain way for a long time doesn't necessarily mean we should keep doing it, or that it's good, or that it's true, or that it's right. Okay? And you all know this, right? Just look back at American history, and you'll see a lot of things that we think are atrocities now used to be how we did things. Right? Good. So, just because something is old or has been in use for a long time doesn't necessarily mean we should continue to do it. Now, there is something to be said about the traditions that we have. It may be that something is a part of our tradition because we've realized that it works. So if somebody is just offering evidence that a tradition has been long-standing, and they're saying, well, this might provide a point or evidence that we might do this thing, they're not necessarily committing the fallacy. Okay? Again, it depends on the context, how the argument is being made, what precisely they're saying and responding to. All right? Okay. How about this one? Appeal to authority. What's this all about? Yeah.
Because someone in power does it, we should do it too, basically.
Say that again?
Because someone in power does it, we should do it too.
Close. Yeah, I'd say that might be an example of this fallacy. Yeah. What do the rest of y'all think? If somebody's committing this fallacy, what are they doing? Yes?
Is it like, trust me because I'm in a seat of like authority?
Ah! Yes, good answer. Often the appeal of authority is a fallacy that's used to try to get you to believe something or accept something or do something because someone in a position of authority is doing it or they told people to do it. That's what this fallacy is about. Okay? But let me ask you, are the people in positions of authority infallible? Do they have all the right views? Do they say all the right things? Somebody say it out loud. No. I bet a lot of you have a lot of problems with a lot of people in positions of authority, right? You think they're doing things backwards, or you don't like them, or you think they're being stupid, right? Whether or not somebody in a position of authority said we should do this or that this is good, again, has no logical bearing on whether or not that view is true or that practice is good or whatever. And you all know this intuitively already. So for example, in response to an argument about foreign affairs, someone says, well, the president said we should support those people. He's the president, so he must know what he's talking about. How would you respond to this person? Yes?
I'll try to give evidence that the president was wrong before,
Yeah, and why might you do that?
to show that he's not always right, that we shouldn't support him just because he's saying this now.
Right, exactly. Presidents have been wrong. They've had false views, right? Just because somebody is in a position of authority doesn't mean they're always right. So the problem with this fallacy is that it says the authority somehow grants legitimacy or truth to what the person is saying. But that's not the way the world works, okay? Whether or not the person is a position of authority or not, they could be saying something true or false. Okay, makes sense? Okay, now we get to another one that a question was asked about earlier in the class. What is an ad hominem? This is a Latin phrase. Yeah.
It's an attack on someone's character instead of like the argument itself.
Ah, very good. Yes. An ad hominem involves, rather than addressing the argument, they just attack the person's character. Okay? For example, you make an argument that I should be turning off the lights when I leave a room. You're like, it saves money, it saves electricity, it's better for the environment. And I'm like, well, you cheated on your girlfriend, so what do you know? Does that have anything to do with the argument you were making? No. No. Good people can make good arguments. Bad people can make good arguments. And vice versa. Okay? Attacking the person's character is not addressing the point. It's not logically addressing the argument. Okay? Guilt by association is associated, with this one. Anybody have any idea what this might mean? Guilt by association.
You supported this person, so the things this person did, you're responsible for.
Yeah, oftentimes that's the implication, right? When somebody is engaging in guilt by association of fallacy, what they're doing is they're not addressing your argument or your point, but what they're actually saying is, oh, you're associated with this bad person, so I'm not going to listen to what you have to say at all. Oh, well, the argument you gave is obviously shit because you voted for Trump. That's not addressing the argument at all. Okay? Yes, these have to do with attacking a person's character rather than the argument. So, for example, in response to a discussion in which a politician, Mr. Smith, argues for raising taxes, someone fires back with, oh, he's always scheming. Since we can't trust him, we shouldn't raise taxes. I mean, maybe you can't trust him. But do you see how this response is not attacking the guy's argument at all? Make sense? When we're looking at arguments, well, we want to address the arguments themselves. Okay? That's what it means to be a good critical thinker, analyzing the points well. You look at the arguments. The person's character doesn't have any necessary or logical bearing on whether or not what they said is true. Immanuel Kant, for example, was a racist, but he revolutionized Western philosophy, and he said a lot of true things, I believe. Okay. Just a few more. Genetic fallacy. Any idea what this one is? Well, it has the word genetic in it. What does that summon up for you?
It's like something that like can't be controlled, or they can't not be this way. Like they're genetic.
Not exactly, but good effort. Yeah.
So like going along with like someone's case because like they're related to them.
That might be an example of it.
Could it be like, since if my father has these genetics, I have these genetics?
Not exactly. Think more generally, more broadly. Have you ever heard someone dismiss an argument because it came from someone they didn't like? That's kind of what the genetic fallacy is about. Okay? Rather than attacking or addressing the point or the argument, the person either accepts it or dismisses it based on where it came from alone. That's what the genetic fallacy is. So, for example, let's say you don't have a great relationship with your mother. You started to date another person, but your mother, doesn't really like you that much. Your mom doesn't like this person. Nevertheless, she's laying out like a cold, hard, evidence-based case of why you shouldn't marry them. Like, look, they have all this debt. I don't think they really love you. Like, they're kind of mean and selfish. I don't think you should marry them. If you dismiss her argument just because it came from her, you're not addressing it at all, right? You're committing a fallacy. It may be that she's laying out a great case that should be, analyzed on its own merits. So, for example, in response to a discussion about art, someone says, well, your view is obviously wrong since you're not an artist. And my view is right since it's based on Picasso's own opinion. This is the only reason they're offering for why the person's view is wrong and why their view is right, based on where it came from. But again, we can have good arguments come from people you don't like. We could have bad arguments coming from people you do like. But dismissing or accepting an argument just based on where it came from, no bueno. Okay? Not logical. It's fallacious. All right, makes sense? Can anybody provide an example of this? Yeah, Annabelle.
I just had a question. So it's fallacious for you to assume, they're wrong because the example you gave, the person isn't an artist, so they must be wrong. But don't we do that anyways? The following chapter was talking about when it comes to reliability and credibility, you have to acknowledge their area of study or
Right, their area of expertise. Yes.
Don't we do that anyways?
Yes. So this kind of gets back to the main point I've been trying to drill into you. Whether or not somebody is committing a fallacy is going to depend on what's said and the context and the precise point being made. If the only reason someone gives you for dismissing or accepting a view is where it comes from, they're committing a fallacy. But they could frame it in a different way and be like, look, this is why I don't accept Joe's opinion. He's presented bad data. He's not an expert in this area, and blah, 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 blah. Then that wouldn't be a fallacy. So whether or not somebody is committing a fallacy, it's not always obvious. That's why we have to dig into the details and look at the framing and look at the meaning of the conversation being had. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, any questions on this one? If you do have questions, please ask them. I am a valuable resource here that wants to see you succeed. Okay, let's move on to the next one then. Certainly you've all heard of this one. Slippery slope. What's this fallacy about? Any ideas? Yeah.
It's starting with a pretty, not reasonable, like a change, and then saying, well, if you're going to allow this, then what's next? Like an even greater change or like an extreme?
Yes, it has to do with that, precisely. This is where we get back to the point that I just made, though, too. Whether somebody is committing this fallacy, again, is going to depend on the context and what precisely they are arguing. Okay? But you're right. The general point has to do with, if we allow this, these bad things are necessarily going to happen. That's what the fallacy is. That's why I put the word undoubtedly in here. It may be the case that, changing the law is going to lead to a bunch of consequences that the person is warning people about. But whether or not they're committing a fallacy, again, it's going to depend on what they mean. If they're just, let's say they did this in an argument, okay? They say, changing the tax law is going to lead to more exploitation of people, and it's going to lead to more oppression, and it's going to lead to, more curbing of our freedoms and blah, 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 and all these different things. But they're saying that based on historical data that they've seen, and they're presenting this data. They're not engaging in the fallacy. Okay? But if they say all these bad things are definitely going to happen, and they're not really presenting any other reasons or data or evidence for their case, they're committing a fallacy. Okay? So again, it kind of depends on context. You need to use your critical thinking skills to try to determine if you or other people are using fallacies. For example, in response to an argument about pornography, someone says, well, if we make it illegal, then people will become sexually frustrated and they will destroy society. We have to keep it legal. Well, if they don't present any other evidence for this claim or any other reasons, they're committing a fallacy. Okay?
Is like this slippery slope also like kind of like jumping to conclusions?
Yeah, there's a leap in logic being made, I'd say. Yeah. They're saying these bad things are definitely going to happen if we allow this one little thing to change. But again, if they, provide a bunch of data and evidence and they're saying, well, this is likely to happen, this is probably what's going to happen, they're not engaging in the fallacy. Does that make sense? Because their claim is based on these other reasons and this other evidence. Again, it kind of depends on how they frame their argument. Whether or not they're saying these things are necessarily going to happen and they don't offer any other evidence or reasons, or not. Does that make sense? Again, it's a little messy, okay? It's a little fuzzy. Okay. How about this one? Appeal to ignorance. What do y'all think? What's this about? Once I say it, you're going to be like, this is dumb. Like, why would somebody say this? Yeah, Angel.
Claim something's true because it hasn't been proven false.
What do the rest of y'all think? Does that sound right? Yeah, basically. Yeah. A fallacy which involves claiming a view is true because it hasn't been proven or shown to be false. For example, I know there are tiny little goblins having parties living in the quantum foam. Hasn't been shown that they're not there. I know for a fact we're living in a simulation. Hasn't been proven that we're not in a simulation. You see how that's kind of silly, right? Just because something hasn't been shown to be false doesn't mean that the flip side is true, right? These things are distinct. They're unrelated. So, for example, I think I used this one. In response to a discussion or argument about physics, someone says, no one knows exactly what resides in the quantum foam. I'm pretty sure there are tiny goblins running around down there, fighting the orcs or something. Can anybody give another example? It can be silly or whatever. How about this? We haven't disproved aliens, so they definitely exist, and they're here. Does that follow? All right, let me hear what you all think. Give me an example.
We haven't disproved that people in power are lizards, so it must be lizards.
Right. Is that a strong argument? Hell no. Right? All right, seems like you have a handle on this one. We're nearing the end here. And this one's a little bit interesting. Mott and Bailey. Anybody ever heard this phrase? Well, it's an example of a fallacy. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. many years ago, there were some human settlements that were organized like this. Okay? We had the peasants and the workers living in this region with their, little homes, doing their work. But they also built a castle near them with walls, so that if invaders were to come and try to steal their crap and enslave them or whatever, they could retreat to the castle, the motte, okay? A more defensible position and protect themselves. The motte and bailey is basically that in argumentative form, okay? It involves putting forth a view that's vulnerable, but then when someone presses you on it, you retreat to a different position, a more defensible position. So you kind of change your view mid through when pressure is applied to you. I'm sure you all have experience with this. Let me see if I can come up with an example on the fly. Well, let's just see what I have. My brain's not working today. Aaron says, I think that the U.S. government is morally obligated to redistribute its resources. Property deeds and capital and care and all of this stuff. When pressed on this view, though, Aaron falls back on, are you telling me life is fair for everyone? Shouldn't people be given a fair shot at life? You see how these are two different views? These are making two different claims, okay? We might say that this first position is a little bit clearer. It's making a strong claim, okay? But when pressed on it, they fall back to something that's maybe a little murkier, harder to attack, less strong, more defensible. Because who's going to disagree with this, right? Doesn't everybody think everybody deserves a fair shot? Of course. But not everybody believes this, right? So, example. Have you ever encountered this in your personal life? You're having a debate with your friend, and they make some claim, and you're like, well, this is why you're wrong for this, this, and this. And then they're like, well, they retreat to a different position, right? Something that nobody would deny. Can you all think of an experience or an example you've had like this? Yeah.
Someone saying carbs are bad for you and then retreating to saying oh, fast food's the main thing that's bad for you.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good example, right? They retreated to the more defensible position. That wasn't the original claim that they made. They changed their position to something more defensible. Right. And this is one that you'll see a lot. It's one that you've probably experienced a lot, even if you don't know it. This happens all the time in conversation. Try to see if you can see this during the next debate or something, political debate. It'll happen. Any questions about this one? Does the general idea make sense? Person gives position or argument. When pressed on it, they retreat to a different position or argument. That's easier to defend. Okay. Finally, we have non sequitur. I forgot to mention this before. Ad hominem, Latin phrase, which basically means to the human or to the person. Again, describes attacking the person's character instead of their argument. Does anybody know what this Latin phrase means? Anybody take 4 years of it, 5 years of it like I did?
going off like how it looks like English words like non-sequential, like it doesn't follow the sequence of logic, so it just maybe skips a step.
Precisely. Great answer. Yeah. Non sequitur literally means it does not follow. And this is one that you've all encountered as well. There's some sort of leap or jump. Logical leap. A jump to a conclusion. Somebody's laying out an argument, they go premise 1, premise 2, whoa! Big jump to a wacky conclusion. Literally, the conclusion does not follow from the premises. Can anybody think of an example of this? This one's really easy. I have brown hair. My mom has brown hair. So the president has brown hair. Does that conclusion follow from the premises? No. Silly, right? Yeah.
Fast food tastes good. Therefore, fast food is healthy.
Yeah. Yes. Good one. Just because it tastes good, does that mean it's good for you? No. You and I all know that the stuff that tastes the best is bad for you. But I'm still going to eat my chocolate at night. Okay. All right. One more example. Yes.
I like pizza, so everyone likes pizza.
All right. Yeah. There is a jump, right? There's a leap to a conclusion that is not supported from the premises. In an argument about science, someone says this to you. Science has gifted us with a lot of knowledge. Scientific truths are the only ones we can reproduce. So science is the only reliable way to obtain knowledge. What do you think about this argument? Does the conclusion follow from the premises? Thumbs up if you think it does. Thumbs down if you think it doesn't. Go. I'm seeing a bunch of thumbs down. That's the right answer. These two premises, science has gifted us with a lot of knowledge, and they're the only ones we can reproduce, might provide evidence that science is robust and it is reliable. But it doesn't follow from these two things that it is the only reliable way to discover how the world works. Can you see how it doesn't follow? From science does these good things, so it's the only way to figure out how the world works. Doesn't follow. Okay, any questions about this one? All right. What I'd like you to do for the last 12 minutes, I want y'all to get into your groups, and I want y'all to try to come up with, in your groups, 3 examples of any one of these fallacies in action. So maybe you want to do appeal to fear, non sequitur, red herring. Give me an example for 3 different fallacies in your group, okay? Try to write it down, talk it through. All right, go ahead.
People are like, oh, this is the best
Okay, what are y'all talking about back here? Got any ideas so far?
Red herring, ad hominem.
Okay.
Deciding on which one.
Any three, doesn't matter. Whatever's easy. How about that? Although the smart thing to do, yeah. So like one red herring, one non sequitur, one. For example, here's a non sequitur, right? I'm wearing a ring. I'm wearing a watch. Therefore, I must be married. Does that follow? No, it's not even on my ring finger, right? You got this.
I don't even know. I think I saw that.
What do you think?
We said for the ad hominem one, we said you're Christian, that's why you're not trustworthy.
Sure,
'Cause, like,
that's an argument.
That's like pointing towards their religion.
Right,
That's
it's attacking their character, right? Yeah. Like, let's say the person was Christian and they said, you know, I think that, you know, the most just economic system is communism. We should all share, you know, and we should share resources. And the person says, well, you're Christian, so you're wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It would also be an example of a non sequitur, right? Whether or not they're Christian doesn't have any bearing on whether what they said is true, right? Yeah, good. All right, seems like you're on the right track.
That'd be like a response to something. Would say like, traffic cones are necessary when there's construction going on. Therefore, we should make it pink instead of red.
Yeah, what would that be an example of? Yeah, it could be red herring. Could also be an example of non sequitur, right? Just because they're necessary, does it follow they have to be pink? Why not neon green?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good.
But beating someone up is like
All right, what are y'all working on over here? Got anything good?
Yeah, for the guilt by association, it was kind of a combo though, because it also is an easy target because you're completely like misconstruing what I was saying. But I was like, oh, what if I argue that I really like Kanye's music? And they're like, oh, but he's crazy online and the things he says on Twitter is like diabolical, so you support that. That's not what I said.
Yeah, that could also be an example of a non sequitur, right? They're throwing an argument back at you, but it doesn't follow just because you like Kanye's music that you're a bad person, something, or like whatever. Like, yeah, sometimes you'll often see a fallacy can fall into one or more categories. You could characterize it as two, maybe three of them sometimes. Yeah. All right, y'all got anything good over here? Any examples?
we have 3 examples.
Excellent, okay.
For the non-sequitur, is that what you say it?
Sequitur, or, yeah.
We said the president has authority, so everyone has authority.
Yeah, does that follow from the president having authority? No. Okay, good, yeah.
Our ad hominem one was 1 + 1 = 2, but you failed math, so you're incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that those are fine examples. It's easy to come up with them when we kind of make the argument silly, right? But people do this all the time. And another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the argument somebody is giving, it could fall into more than one category. So somebody might be engaging in an ad hominem and a non sequitur. For example, you like Kanye's music. Kanye's a crazy bad person. You're a bad person. If that's the conclusion, it doesn't follow that you're a bad person just because you enjoy his music, right? So it's a non sequitur, and we might also think it's an ad hominem. Yeah. Okay, good. Good.
So how are you a sophomore? You skipped a grade? No, just a
I might be 60. I think I'm at 84.
Okay, let's reconvene up here. Let me hear what you all came up with. Give me an example from your group of a fallacy and that fallacy in action. Yes.
We did appeal to fear. We said, if you don't vote for me for president of student council, I'm going to beat you up.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the only reason they're giving, right, they're appealing to your emotions, right? They're not. Right. Good. Yes.
A lot of people gamble to make money, so you make money by gambling.
What would that be an example of?
That would be an example of popularity, because a lot of people do it.
It could be popularity. We might also say that could fall into non sequitur, right? The conclusion does not follow from the premise. And this is something that y'all should keep in mind as well. When somebody's giving an argument and it's fallacious, it could fall into more than one category. Okay? For example, you like Kanye's music. Kanye is a bad, crazy person, so his music is shit and you're a bad person. We could see that as an ad hominem and a non sequitur, right? It doesn't follow that just because you enjoy his music that you're a bad person. At least I don't think so. I don't listen to him though, but you see how it could fall into more than one category sometimes? Okay, good. Give me another example. Yeah.
I can't beat you, so you hate.
Right. These aren't hard to come up with, right? Especially if we make them a little silly. But if you really pay attention to what people are saying in person and online, you'll also often see things like this. Okay, good. Give me one more. Yes.
For an appeal to ignorance, it hasn't been disproven that I'm two kids in a trench coat.
So?
It must be true.
Right. We haven't disproven it, right? We haven't ripped your trench coat off, so I know there are two kids under there. Right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about these? Comments, concerns? All right. That's it for logical fallacies. Next week, we're actually going to look at a lot more interesting stuff. So I hope you look forward to it. Don't forget to do the readings and get your audio journals in, all right? All right. Have a good weekend.